You want to become unrecognizable in a week, then start by reclaiming the first hour of your day, because that hour is where your life is decided long before anyone else has a say. The morning is not just a time slot, it's a statement of ownership. The way you spend that first hour is a mirror of how you spend your energy, your focus, your attention. Most people wake up and immediately give their power away. They check their phones, scroll through messages, dive straight into the noise of the world before they've even heard their own thoughts. And without realizing it, they begin the day reacting, not leading. If you want to become powerful, you must learn to master the morning. That doesn't mean waking up at 4 a.m. or following someone else's rigid routine. It means creating a sacred boundary, an hour that belongs only to you. No notifications, no opinions, no distractions, just you, your mind, and your direction, because clarity is not found in noise, it's born in quiet. Think of it this way: every morning you wake up with a full tank of mental energy, but most people pour it into everyone else's agenda before they ever use it for themselves. They scroll, they react, they respond, but leaders, true leaders, spend that energy investing in their vision before the world makes its demands. That's what separates those who drift from those who direct. In that first hour, move your body. It's not about fitness, it's about ownership. You're sending a message to your brain that says, I'm in control here. Read something that stretches your thinking. Journal or write down your priorities for the day, not a to-do list, but a purpose list. What will make today meaningful? What kind of person will I choose to be when the challenges arrive? Because they will. And when they do, your morning routine becomes your armor. When you control how your day begins, you shape how it unfolds. You're no longer pulled by emotions or circumstances. You're guided by intent. And that is what power truly looks like, not dominance but direction, not noise but focus. So if you want to become unrecognizable in 1 week, don't start by changing your job, your habits, or your appearance. Start by changing your mornings, because the person you become at 6 a.m. is the one who determines who you'll be at 6 p.m. And when you win the first hour, you quietly start winning your entire life. Silence is one of the most misunderstood forms of strength. We live in a world where noise has become a form of validation, where people feel seen only when they're heard, and where constant sharing has replaced meaningful understanding. But the truth is, silence is not the absence of power. It is the refinement of it. When you stop explaining yourself, when you stop announcing every move, you begin to conserve an energy that most people waste trying to prove something. And that energy, when directed inward, becomes focus, clarity, and influence. The people who appear powerful are rarely the loudest in the room. They are the ones who listen with intent, observe without reacting, and speak only when their words can shift the direction of a conversation. That restraint isn't weakness, it's mastery, because silence demands self-control, and self-control is the root of all confidence. When you know who you are and what you're doing, you don't need to convince anyone else of it. You allow your actions, your consistency, and your results to speak on your behalf. Silence also sharpens perception. When you quiet the external noise, you begin to hear the subtler signals, the tone behind words, the emotion behind decisions, the patterns in human behavior that most overlook. You start to see opportunities that others miss simply because they're too busy talking. This is why powerful people move differently. They act with precision, not impulse. Their silence isn't a retreat, it's a strategy. There's another side to this, a deeper one. When you withdraw from constant expression, you're not just creating distance from others. You're reconnecting with yourself. You begin to hear your own thoughts again, without the interference of public opinion. You start to understand what you genuinely value, what actually matters, and what noise you've been mistaking for truth. That kind of awareness doesn't make you quieter. It makes you unshakable, because when you know yourself deeply, the world can no longer manipulate you with approval or rejection. So take time to be silent, not as an escape, but as an investment. Sit in the discomfort of your own thoughts until they stop being strangers. Learn to listen, not to reply, but to understand. In silence, you will find strength. In restraint, you will find clarity. And in that clarity, you will discover a power that doesn't need to announce itself because real power is felt, not heard. Look around you for a moment. Every person in your circle is influencing you in ways you can't always see. Some are building you. Some are quietly dismantling you. The truth is, we don't rise in isolation. We rise in the environment we create. Energy is contagious, and if you surround yourself with people who settle for mediocrity, it's only a matter of time before you start lowering your standards too. We mirror the habits, language, and even the level of ambition of those closest to us. That's why becoming powerful requires a brutal kind of honesty about who gets access to you. Most people hold on to relationships out of history, not alignment. They keep company with those who once made sense, but no longer serve their direction. And it's not about arrogance, it's about awareness. Growth demands that you edit your environment as deliberately as you design your goals. Because no matter how disciplined or motivated you are, if the people around you constantly doubt, distract, or drain you, your progress will always be slower than your potential. The most powerful people in the world are intentional about proximity. They don't just spend time, they invest it. They seek out conversations that challenge their thinking, not just validate their comfort. They surround themselves with people who hold them accountable to their highest standards, not their easiest excuses. And when those people aren't available, they're not afraid to walk alone for a while. Solitude is better than small-minded company. There's also something deeply psychological about this. We crave belonging. It's hardwired into us. But belonging can either lift us or trap us, depending on the tribe we choose. If your circle normalizes complaining, self-doubt, or laziness, you will begin to absorb it as your truth. But when your circle normalizes discipline, learning, and courage, those traits start to feel natural, even inevitable. The environment shifts your identity, and your identity shapes your destiny. You don't have to cut people off with hostility, but you do have to choose with intention. Spend time with those who remind you of your potential, not your past. Protect your energy like it's the most valuable currency you own, because it is. If you truly want to become unrecognizable in a week, start by changing the room you stand in. Because no matter how powerful your vision is, if you're surrounded by people who can't see it, it will always seem smaller than it really is. Look around you for a moment. Every person in your circle is influencing you in ways you can't always see. Some are building you. Some are quietly dismantling you. The truth is, we don't rise in isolation. We rise in the environment we create. Energy is contagious, and if you surround yourself with people who settle for mediocrity, it's only a matter of time before you start lowering your standards too. We mirror the habits, language, and even the level of ambition of those closest to us. That's why becoming powerful requires a brutal kind of honesty about who gets access to you. Most people hold on to relationships out of history, not alignment. They keep company with those who once made sense, but no longer serve their direction. And it's not about arrogance, it's about awareness. Growth demands that you edit your environment as deliberately as you design your goals. Because no matter how disciplined or motivated you are, if the people around you constantly doubt, distract, or drain you, your progress will always be slower than your potential. The most powerful people in the world are intentional about proximity. They don't just spend time, they invest it. They seek out conversations that challenge their thinking, not just validate their comfort. They surround themselves with people who hold them accountable to their highest standards, not their easiest excuses. And when those people aren't available, they're not afraid to walk alone for a while. Solitude is better than small-minded company. There's also something deeply psychological about this. We crave belonging. It's hardwired into us. But belonging can either lift us or trap us, depending on the tribe we choose. If your circle normalizes complaining, self-doubt, or laziness, you will begin to absorb it as your truth. But when your circle normalizes discipline, learning, and courage, those traits start to feel natural, even inevitable. The environment shifts your identity, and your identity shapes your destiny. You don't have to cut people off with hostility, but you do have to choose with intention. Spend time with those who remind you of your potential, not your past. Protect your energy like it's the most valuable currency you own, because it is. If you truly want to become unrecognizable in a week, start by changing the room you stand in. Because no matter how powerful your vision is, if you're surrounded by people who can't see it, it will always seem smaller than it really is. Pain has a strange reputation. Most people see it as something to avoid, something to escape from as quickly as possible. But pain, in truth, is one of the most honest teachers you'll ever have. It doesn't lie. It doesn't flatter. It doesn't pretend. Pain shows you exactly where you are and what still needs to change. And if you're willing to listen to it instead of resisting it, it will shape you into someone far stronger than comfort ever could. We've been taught to associate pain with punishment, but it's often preparation. Every difficult experience, every rejection, every setback, every sleepless night is chiseling away at the weaker version of you. The challenge is that most people quit halfway through the process. They feel the sting and assume something's gone wrong, when in reality, something is being rebuilt. Growth never feels like growth when you're in the middle of it. It feels like breaking. But those who keep going through the breaking are the ones who emerge with unshakable confidence and quiet power. Think about it. The most resilient people you know didn't get that way because life was kind to them. They got that way because life demanded something from them. Pain forced them to develop strength they didn't know they had, focus they didn't know they needed, and patience they never would have practiced otherwise. Pain, when seen correctly, is a sculptor. It chips away at the unnecessary so that the essential can stand revealed. This isn't about glorifying struggle. It's about reframing it. When you start viewing pain as part of your evolution rather than evidence of failure, you stop resisting it. You begin to use it. Every setback becomes data. Every obstacle becomes training. And instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" you begin to ask, "What is this trying to teach me?" That simple shift in mindset transforms pain from an enemy into an ally. The truth is, no one becomes unrecognizable without discomfort. Pain is the price of transformation. It's the process that refines your strength, tests your faith, and proves your commitment to your vision. If it doesn't challenge you, it can't change you. So when you feel that ache, whether it's emotional, physical, or mental, don't run. Lean into it, because hidden inside that pain is the exact lesson you need to rise. And if you can learn to see pain as your greatest coach, you'll discover that every wound carries wisdom, and every scar tells the story of how you became powerful. Motivation is overrated. It's a spark. It gets you started, but it never lasts. Discipline is what keeps the fire alive when the spark fades. The people who appear unstoppable aren't constantly inspired. They're consistent. They've learned to act on commitment, not emotion. They show up when it's hard, when it's inconvenient, when no one is watching. And that's what makes them powerful. We live in a culture obsessed with feelings. We wait to feel ready, to feel inspired, to feel in the mood. But if you wait for the right feeling to take action, you'll spend most of your life waiting. Discipline isn't about denying emotion. It's about mastering it. It's the quiet agreement you make with yourself that your goals are non-negotiable, even when your motivation disappears. And ironically, when you act with discipline long enough, the motivation starts to return, not as a feeling, but as evidence. Think of discipline as trust. Every time you keep a promise to yourself, you strengthen that trust. You begin to believe in your own word. You build momentum, and that momentum becomes identity. You stop saying, "I'm trying to be disciplined," and start saying, "This is who I am." That's the shift that separates those who wish from those who win. Rituals play a huge role here. Discipline thrives in structure. When you build daily rituals, no matter how small, you reduce the friction between intention and action. You don't need to decide whether to work out, read, or reflect. It's simply what you do. Rituals turn progress into autopilot. And the more you automate your growth, the less energy you waste negotiating with your excuses. There's also a deeper psychology behind discipline. It's not punishment, it's self-respect. It's saying, "I value my future enough to make sacrifices in the present." Discipline doesn't shrink your freedom, it expands it, because when you control your habits, you control your outcomes. When you control your outcomes, you control your life. That's not limitation, that's liberation. So, if you truly want to become unrecognizable in a week, stop chasing motivation and start building systems. Don't rely on emotion, rely on execution. You don't need to feel ready, you need to be consistent. Because at the end of the day, it's not the intensity of your effort that changes your life, it's the consistency of it. And once discipline stops feeling like effort and starts feeling like identity, you'll realize power isn't built in the moments you're inspired. It's built in the moments you're tired but show up. Anyway, everything starts with identity. Before you can change your habits, your routines, or your outcomes, you must first change the way you see yourself. Because the truth is, you will never act consistently against your own belief system. If deep down you still see yourself as someone who's lazy, undisciplined, or unworthy, no amount of motivation will make your transformation last. Real power begins when you stop trying to improve your life and start deciding who you are. Identity drives behavior. Every decision you make is a reflection of who you believe yourself to be. If you identify as someone who's trying to get fit, you'll act inconsistently. But if you start believing, "I'm an athlete in progress," your behavior begins to align with that identity. The same goes for leadership, confidence, and success. You don't wait for the world to validate your new self, you lead with it. You act as if, not to fake it, but to train your mind to catch up with your potential. This is where most people get it wrong. They chase external change, hoping it will fix the internal conflict. They change their jobs, their clothes, their routines, yet their self-concept remains untouched. And so the same patterns reappear in new environments. But when identity shifts first, action follows naturally. You no longer have to force discipline or confidence. They become expressions of who you already are. Becoming unrecognizable isn't about creating a new version of yourself out of thin air. It's about uncovering the version that's been buried under years of doubt, criticism, and comparison. It's about remembering who you were before the world told you who to be. That kind of clarity doesn't just change your performance, it changes your presence. You start showing up differently, you speak with more certainty, you stop needing permission. And here's the paradox. When you finally believe in who you are becoming, the world starts to reflect it back to you. Opportunities appear, people respond differently. It's not magic, it's alignment. When your identity, words, and actions are in sync, your life begins to organize itself around that new truth. So if you want to become powerful, start with belief. See yourself before the world does, because you cannot lead anyone, least of all yourself, without vision. And once you decide who you are, the world has no choice but to catch up. The transformation doesn't start when others recognize you. It starts the moment you finally recognize yourself.